Welcome everyone to Game 2 War Banner. The scenario for Game 2 is we need to kill the most expensive unit, the cheapest unit, and also the unit that has the duelist in it. So those are the unique scenarios for this second game of the tournament. Game 2 sees me up against Erdem, who's another very familiar opponent of mine. Play against Erdem regularly, both in tournaments and also casually, as he lives just up the road from me. So always find Erdem a tough proposition. He plays highborn elves, usually pyromancy, usually more shooting than me, and really just in general I look across the table and he seems to have stronger shooting, stronger magic, plenty of speed, more bodies, more armor. Yeah, just in general, highborn elves are quite possibly the matchup that I find the most difficult. Very rarely have I managed to win a game off Erdem, and I think never in a tournament. So yeah, looking forward to this game. Because it's another chance to try and topple Erdem in a tournament, but this doesn't at first glance look like a good matchup to me. So yeah, very nervous about this, really was totally unsure how I would approach this game. I'd looked at his list quite a lot and really hadn't come up with a plan. Pretty much felt this was the one list I hoped to avoid throughout the tournament. So just quickly looking at it, basically the things that worry me is the 2 units of 20 archers and the pyro mage. That on its own is a really savage threat to my army. You put in the 2 sky sloops and the 2 big units of swordmasters, and really this is a difficult proposition, so we'll see how this plays out. So just quickly looking at my Sylvan Elf army, very similar to my Guardcon army, other than I've dropped some of my other scoring units and instead taken a giant block of spearmen. If you're new to this series of games, I'd recommend you have a look at the previous video I made that analyzes this list and the reasons why I've taken it. So the battlefield type is, I can never remember the name of this, it is the male-female deployment scenario. Can never remember the proper name for it. I picked sides and chose to deploy forward in the middle. Chose this side mainly for the fact that he had the building deep in the corner there. I felt he was likely to sit back and wait for me, and this gave me an opportunity to be able to throw Master of Earth spells at him while keeping my distance if need be. For magic, we managed to roll up Scrying, Fate's Judgment, Know Thy Enemy, and Unerring Strike, which I think was pretty much the perfect combination for me. And in return for his pyromancy spells, he got 1, 2, 3, and 5. So perhaps not his ideal combination, but I would say he's fairly happy with that overall. So I'm trying to remember, as it's been now a couple of weeks since this tournament. Have a feeling that we traded a couple of drops early on, and then pretty soon into deployment, Erdem dropped everything and took first turn. So yeah, I was, as I say, very worried about those 2 swordman units. Wasn't entirely sure how I would take those out. Don't have any shooting in this army. Could potentially throw a tree man in front of one of them, but that's a lot of attacks that I'm going to take. So even though he'd pretty much dropped down everything and given me the opportunity to, you know, out deploy him perhaps, I really wasn't any wiser in how I was actually going to approach this game. The combination of all that shooting and pyro really concerns me, and then so much power in melee combat as well with his 2 swordmaster units. I really wasn't quite sure what to do, so I ended up going with a plan of trying to almost surround him, I guess, deploying relatively wide across the table, Kestrels on one side with the Forest Prince, Tree Fathers and the other Kestrel unit position to sort of push up on the left hand side. But yeah, really wasn't actually entirely sure what I was going to do. I kind of almost hoped if I fan out, kind of push forward a little bit and bit unevenly, and hopefully create some angles where I can combo charge, as I kind of feel I need to get a Tree Father into the front of those Swordmen units, maybe the Spearmen, Dryads, Kestrels, something like that in the flank. Yeah, really, as I say, just I don't know how I'm going to beat this army. This is a tough matchup. So in Vanguards, the right Kestrel unit just move up a little bit. In return, the Reavers just back up further behind the hill, so don't really do an awful lot there. My other Kestrel unit drops backwards behind the Treeman and the Spearman, kind of chickening out a little bit there on my plan of surrounding him. I was having second thoughts and doubting myself here. Really wasn't quite sure what I was going to do. And his last Reaver unit just moved forward, vanguarding out of the pond there as well. So he gets first turn, as I knew he would. He had a massive bonus on his roll. So he pushes forward on the left hand side with his Swordmasters, just moving his archer units up slightly to be in range. The sloops move forward in the middle of the board there with the Swordmasters in behind, and the Reavers pretty much just stay where they are. So moving on to Magic, and he rolls up an 11-6 Magic phase. You got to be kidding me. A tough matchup, and he's going to get dice like that for his Magic phase. This is nasty. So he goes ahead and starts picking on that Kestrel unit that I had dropped back, hitting it with a Pyroclastic Flow, and I think also a Ring of Fire, inflicting 4 wounds there, as well as killing off 2 Spearmen with the Attribute, as the Kestrels were a little bit too far away there, and I think he also got Flaming Swords off. So yeah, pretty impressive first Magic phase. On the upside, he had a massive miscast on, I think it was Flaming Swords bubble spell, and killed off about 10 of his archers, as well as flicking wounds on his mage. So, you know, I guess a reasonable trade overall. In shooting, I don't think I had an awful lot in range for him, so I think he inflicted just a wound on the Tree Father that was closest, and I think that was about it. So, Sylvan Elves turn 1. So we start moving up towards him, but at the same time trying to keep out of range of charges from his Swordmasters and even his sloops. I don't really want to be taking a charge from them. So the 2 Tree Fathers push forward, the Spearmen turn around to face towards the corner that he's holding up in, and the Dryad Bunker moves forward just so I can start trying to magic missile at him, hopefully do a little bit of damage at range as I move in. On the far right hand side, the lone Kestrel that survived is fleeing to hopefully not give up points there. The reserve Dryad unit is just hanging out in behind in case it's needed, and of course the Briar Maidens and now the Kestrels are moving up to kind of corner him and hopefully take advantage of any flanks he exposes. In Magic, we roll up a 7-4 Magic phase, and unfortunately we fail to channel. I believe I'm channeling on a 2 or a 3, and so far I haven't managed to channel, and I believe my first spell I failed to cast it, and therefore managed to get nothing off in my first Magic phase. Everything is out of range for me to shoot, so that is the end of my turn. So going on to Highborn Elves, turn 2. He continues to really not maneuver very much at all. The Reavers drop back, Swordmasters just nudge forward, the Sloops just nudge across a little bit, the Swordmasters turn around to face the Kestrels and Briar Maidens that are coming that direction, and the Reavers there and the Eagle just drop back as well. So really playing to his strengths. He doesn't need to come and get me. He can just sit back and keep shooting me and throwing fireballs at me really. So yeah, smart play at this stage for him. So in Magic we get a 5/4 Magic phase. It's a little bit more like it. He manages to pick off a few wounds with Magic and shooting. I think all up he kills 5 spearmen, and I think that is pretty much it. Pretty happy with that he was only able to get really one spell off. He continued to shoot at the tree man that was closest, and the tree man continued to soak up the damage. I think he made a lucky ward save against the sloop, which was pretty helpful to have him there just soaking up that damage where could have been losing a lot of spearmen. So moving on to Sylvan Elves turn 2, we continue to work on that plan of surrounding him and just really hoping he gives me an opening here if I put enough pressure on him at different angles. So we pushed the Kestrels a little bit further forward, but just hung them back so the Swordmasters couldn't charge them. I think I made a little bit of an error here that perhaps the Briar Maidens could have just nudged onto the hill, but I didn't want to offer him a charge with the Swordmasters. If he made that, he'd kill the Briar Maidens and then he'd be in behind me and all sorts of bad things would start to happen. The Dryad Matriarchs just get in range for their magic. The tree man is able to push a little further forward and stay out of arc of the Swordmasters. And then further on the left, the spearmen push forward a little bit more, but not far, as I really don't want to get charged by the Swordmasters. The other tree father just slides across a little bit. And that's about it. We don't want to give him any openings, but we're trying to put pressure on him. It's a bit of a game of cat and mouse at the moment, but unfortunately he's got the ranged power, and I think I probably played this wrong. I needed to push harder at him and actually put more pressure on. So moving on to Magic, we roll up a 10-6 Magic phase. Unfortunately we failed to channel again, needing a 4 to channel at the moment I believe. But still useful Magic phase. I can't quite remember how I sucked Erdem's dice out. I think I went for Oaken Throne or something like that and managed to draw out a couple of his magic dice, and then I went for a big unerring strike on the Sky Sloop that is closer to the center of the board. Got a big roll on 4 dice there of 21, so it gets off, and then as you can see we rolled up 3, 6, 9, 10, 11 hits, and 9 of them wounded the sloop, and the sloop is destroyed in one go. Man, that is very, very lucky for me. Worked out extremely well. We even managed to have, I think, 1 die left over, so we went for a cheeky Master of Earth from the building onto the Eagle, and managed to inflict a wound there as well. So overall, a very, very successful phase. Got to say, I've really come to love that unerring strike. It is just such a good answer to so many things. Yeah, huge fan of divination, and particularly that spell, just to give us an answer to some of these nasty characters and chariots and things that are constantly spammed at the moment. So moving on to Highborn Elves turn 3. At this point, Erdem made a crucial mistake. This really was game changing. I'm not entirely sure why, but he decided to move his mage out from his archer unit and drop it back in behind the rest of his army. It is still in range there from to cast spells, but it is in range for me to Master of Earth him from the building. So my game plan as soon as I saw this was do whatever I can to draw his dice out on my next magic phase, save myself 2 dice at the end, and go for a Master of Earth on that mage. As long as I get it off, I got a really good chance to kill him, and then without Pyromancy, I feel I can probably then take this army on. In other moves, he continues really to just shuffle around. The archers don't really move anywhere. The eagle and the sloop just drop in behind the archers. The swordmaster units do move forward a little bit, particularly the one in the center of the board starts advancing forward, and the reavers just hover around. So he again continues really to not do an awful lot, just relying on his shooting and pyro to continue to pick me off, much as it has been so far. So moving on to magic, and he rolls up a 6/4 magic phase, and finally after all this time we channel. So we've got a 6/5 magic phase again. You can handle these close ones and just let one spell through and hopefully stop the rest. So he manages to get a regular flaming swords off on this archer unit here. I decide to let it go through as I figure all he can shoot at is my tree man, and while winning on 5s is not bad, I've still got a good armor save and a ward save, and I'm relatively hopeful he'll only pick off maybe a couple of wounds, which we can handle. I'd much rather that than cop fireballs on my spearman unit. So through magic and shooting, he manages to inflict another wound on the tree father on the left. He also manages to inflict a wound on the tree father on the right. So, not terrible, slowly picking wounds off them, but nothing too damaging. So moving on to Sylvan Elves' turn. So on the left hand side I see that my tree father can push forward out of arc of the Swordmasters. Gives me an opportunity to move forward and start shooting him, but also now, as I was talking about earlier, try and force some difficult decisions on him and hopefully open up some angles against him, because I really do feel I'm going to need some combo charges, so I'm going to break those two infantry units. The spearmen in the center just alter their positioning a little bit, don't really move much. Across on the right hand side, the Briar Maidens run right in behind the Swordmasters. They can shoot the Swordmasters in the back or attack the Eagle or Sloop that's hiding in behind the building there. The Kestrels move forward as well, trying to give themselves an arc for a charge on the Swordmasters there, but also safely hiding where they are. The Tree Father in the middle there, again potentially an error here. Maybe I needed to angle him a bit more so he had better line of sight arc, but he's hiding behind the hill from the Swordmasters, while the Matriarch unit is just hanging back far enough to again be able to cast the spells on a couple of unit options there, as well as getting the Guiding Light buff off where I need it. So feeling reasonably happy now where I'm set up, especially as I get an opportunity to kill the mage if I get a decent magic phase. So speaking of magic phases, we roll up a 6/3 magic phase. Again, failing to channel, really not getting benefit out of all of these bonuses onto my channel roll at the moment, but 6/3 is reasonably good, as if I can force him to use his dice on the first spell, we can Master of Earth that wizard with the second one. To be honest, I can't remember what spell I cast first. I know I did unleash one of my divination magic missiles. He used his dice to dispel it, and then we went for our Master of Earth on the mage, and bang, we got him. A huge swing. He manages to pass his panic tests for the unit destroyed within 6 inches, but I'll tell you what, I am wrapped that I'm going to be playing half of this game with him not having magic, particularly pyro. That can hurt me so bad. So yeah, that is a big swing now with a sloop down and his mage down. At this point we're up on points. And shooting, I don't think I did an awful lot. I think I shot into the back of the spearman unit, might have killed off 1 or 2 spearmen, but I don't think I did an awful lot there. And we move on to Highborn Elves, turn 4. So turn 4, he continues to pretty much sit in his corner to a large degree. The archers hold back, the sloop and the eagle hold back. The Swordmasters in the center of the board do push forward quite aggressively up on top of the hill, while the other Swordmasters now wheel around to face towards my Briar Maidens, which I think he is fairly worried about. So hopefully here we're creating some opportunities to get in some flank charges, hopefully, but yeah, still concerned about what he's going to do to me, and I get a very nasty surprise on my turn when I try and take advantage of the positioning that he's in at the moment. So of course his mage is dead, so not much happens in magic. In shooting, he's able to pick off a couple of wounds, kills off a Maiden from the Maiden unit and 3 Spearmen from the Spearman unit, but all in all that's not particularly painful for me to weather that storm. So we go on to Sylvan Elves turn 4. So turn 4 we try and take advantage of the positioning that we're in. The tree man moves further forward on that left hand flank. I really want to have a go at charging the archer unit that is in the pond there. Perhaps have him fail a terror test, or get in combat and we will just unleash our thunder stomps there and win that combat quite well, I would imagine. The Dryad Matriarch unit start moving across towards the left hand side, just getting out of arc of the Swordmasters there and keeping in range to keep throwing magic missiles into them and into the archer unit. The Bariah Maiden unit with the Lord move around so that they can throw their poison javelins into the slope, possibly even bait them into charging me and kill that off with my Lord, even if it costs me a couple of Briar Maidens, as then we can run around behind and hopefully clean up those archer units and the eagle and pick up a few points there. I'd probably almost be happy to just avoid the 2 Swordmaster blocks and kill everything else at this stage if I can. Into the center of the board, and I made my fatal mistake. I charged my Spearman into the flank of his Swordmasters. I thought about charging the Kestrels into the other flank, and I'm rather glad I didn't, as I wasn't aware of what his character in the unit there does. Only ever really come across the Lord in the chariot, the BSB with the bow, and Pyro Mages really whenever I've played any version of Highborn Elves. Erdem has got some seldom played characters, and they are able to reform to face whatever direction they like when they are charged. And so I charged that Swordmaster unit and thinking, great, I'm going to have ranks, banners, charge. I'm going to get a lot more attacks than him. I'll have my BSB to take out a few wounds, give me distracting. I'll pretty much auto break him, and that'll be game. And of course, he spins around and faces me, and all of a sudden, I'm thinking, oh crap, he goes first. That's a lot of Swordmasters. I'm not going to have too many elves left alive at the end of this battle. Just in behind, I move the tree man up ready to charge next turn, and the Kestrels are there ready to charge next turn as well, but potentially there's not going to be too many spearmen left for next turn. So moving on to magic, and luckily we roll up an 8-4 magic phase, but of course again we fail to channel. But on the upside, he does not have a mage to dispel. Pretty critical that we are able to buff up our spearman unit. We first go for Know Thy Enemy, so that we will go first. Erdem dispels that one, says no, you're not having that. So we go for Scrying and Guiding Light on them instead, just in case my BSB fluffs his attacks and we're unable to get Scrying off anyway. Possibly wasn't the best spell to go for, but guaranteed Scrying I guess is going to be worth something. If I do lose combat, the Guiding Light Leadership 9 reroll should mean that I hold. Hopefully, fingers crossed, we can hold long enough to get another turn and then come in behind with the Tree Man and the Kestrels and win that combat, even if it takes a little bit longer than I had originally thought. In shooting, we're able to kill off the sloop with our Briar Maiden, so again, a good turn for me. Got a buff off, killed off another threat. Still at this point, haven't really coughed up any points at all, so the game is well in hand at this stage as long as this first melee combat goes my way. And moving on to combat, and it is brutal. I hate to think how many spearmen I've lost there. That's a big pile of dead guys at the back there. What did I have? Almost 4 full ranks, and now we're down to only a rank and barely a half. And he's still got his entire front rank, plus one guy in behind. So he wins combat, but luckily for me, I am steadfast on my cold-blooded leadership 9, so we're able to hold. Not able to reform smaller though, so he's got the opportunity now to do a rear charge with his other unit of Swordmasters, and yeah, I had thought this was going to be a combat that would comprehensively win me the game, and in return it's offering up Erdem a really good chance to get back into this game, unfortunately. So moving on to Highborn Elves, turn 5. So turn 5, he goes for a few charges here. He charges his archer unit into the flank of my spearmen. I'm going to have to kill off some of them as he's got 2 ranks which will break my steadfast. So we've got to manage to kill plenty of them off. He failed a charge into the rear with his other Swordmaster unit. That was huge. I'll tell you, that was really, really huge. That would have cost me so many points. I think from memory he needed maybe a 7 or an 8. It was a pretty 50-50 charge. Unfortunately, luck was on my side there right when I needed it to be. On the left hand side, the Reavers move up to chaff my Treefather, and the Archers also move forward. Yeah, so opportunity there, pick up some points hopefully with the Treefather on that side as well. So in Magic, of course he's not able to do anything, and I'm trying to remember what happens here as I've run out of pictures. I believe the Archers might have shot at the Treefather on the left hand side and failed to inflict any wounds, and that was all he was really able to do before the combat phase. So in combat, looks like I managed to kill off 3 archers on the left hand side and a couple of swordsmen. In return, looks like I lost about 10 spearmen, but somehow we hold. Trying to work out what the combat res would be. He's got a charge and a flank and a banner and 10 wounds, so he's got 12, 13 combat res. I killed 3 archers, so he's up by 10. Yeah, maybe a few swordmasters, so maybe, you know, up by 7. I've got a banner, and I've got a BSB, and I've got a war banner, so maybe he's only up by 4. I'm cold-blooded leadership 9, so I must have passed maybe a leadership 5 cold-blooded roll on the reroll or something. Yeah, definitely got lucky there. First he failed the charge in the rear with the swordmasters, and then somehow I managed to hold on a pretty lucky leadership test. So gives me the opportunity to now charge him in return. So we go on to what ends up being the last turn of the game. I possibly could have picked up a few more points here by charging in the Lord with the Briar Maidens into the back of the archers, but I wasn't confident I was going to break that unit, and I didn't want to, you know, fail some dangerous terrain and end up actually causing myself some problems. So we just went for a charge on the left with the Treefather into the Reavers that were chaffing him. I had hoped that they would fail their terror test and run off the board, and then I could go into the archers, but yeah, it didn't work out that way. And over into the center there, I charged the Kestrels into the flank of the archers, and I charged the Treefather into the rear of the Swordman unit. So hopefully we can now destroy that unit and pick up some big points. In combat, that's basically what happens. The Treefather destroys the Reavers on the left. Unfortunately, the Archer unit passes their leadership test, while in the center of the board, the combined might of the Kestrels and the BSB managed to destroy the Archer unit on the left hand side of me there. That's on my spearman's flank. Unfortunately, he is able to kill the rest of my spearmen, but in return the Treefather in behind kills enough of the Swordman to auto break them, and the Kestrels run down the surviving archers, while the BSB and the Tree Father run down the surviving Swordmasters. So ends up a fairly comprehensive win to the Sylvan Elves. End total is 3,315 points for me, up against Erdem's 1,545. So you would have finished up as a 15-5 in the regular scoring. Again, unfortunately, 3,300 points in a Carnage System tournament is really not enough to keep me in touch with the leaders. The two big winners in round one both won really big again in round two. I think both of them scored approximately 5,000 points in their second game, so they're both sitting pretty close to 10,000 points after two games, while I am down at only around about 6,000 points. So I'm already one huge win behind them after just two games. Yeah, probably need to be playing a little bit more aggressively, need to be trying to basically stop conserving points and get in there and kill more stuff. Yeah, playing probably a little bit of avoidance, maybe need to be a little bit more pushing forward and smashing face perhaps. So did a little bit better in the secondary objectives in this matchup, managed to destroy his cheapest unit as well as destroy the unit that had his duelist in it, so picked up a few bonus points there. So all in all, pretty happy with this. Like I said, first time beating Erdem in a tournament game. This was probably, like I said earlier on, the matchup that I most wanted to avoid. I really do struggle against Highborn Elves in most games against them. Really enjoyed my game though. Erdem's again a fabulous opponent, always a good sport, always puts in a tough game. Yeah, always a pleasure to play, and looking forward to my next game coming up against John, who's brought Vampire Counts to this tournament, or Vampire Covenant, I think what they should be called now. Again, another player I have never beaten in a tournament. In fact, I don't think ever beaten ever. So another opportunity to knock somebody off that list of people who I am yet to beat, and hopefully we can pick up a few more Carnage points in this next game, as I really can't afford to let the top players get any further ahead. So I hope you've enjoyed this battle. I'm enjoying bringing them to you. Feel free to like, subscribe or comment down below. Always interested in your thoughts, and do try and make a point of replying to any comments that you do leave. So again, thanks for watching, and we'll look forward to bringing you game 3 hopefully in the next day or two.